The wind cut through Daniel's thin jacket like a knife. He pulled the collar closer to his neck, but it didn't help much. The fabric was old and worn, with a small tear near the shoulder that he kept meaning to fix, but never had time for. It was nearly midnight, and the temperature had dropped below freezing. His breath came out in thick clouds as he walked along the side of the highway, his work boots crunching on the frost-covered gravel. Daniel had just finished his shift at the warehouse on the edge of town. It was his second job of the day. Every morning, he worked at a small diner downtown, flipping eggs and making coffee for the early crowd. Then, after a quick break, he headed to the warehouse where he loaded boxes until his back ached and his hands were raw. The pay wasn't great at either place, but he needed every dollar he could get. His mother was sick, really sick. The medical bills kept piling up on the kitchen table, and her medication cost more than their monthly rent. Daniel was only 23, but sometimes he felt like he was carrying the weight of the whole world on his shoulders. Still, he never complained. His mother had raised him alone after his father passed away when he was just a kid. Working multiple jobs herself to keep food on the table and clothes on his back, now it was his turn to take care of her. The highway was almost empty at this hour. Most people were home, warm in their beds, probably dreaming about the upcoming holidays. Daniel tried not to think about how cold he was, or how far he still had to walk. His old truck had broken down 3 weeks ago, and he didn't have the money to fix it. So now he walked everywhere, sometimes for miles, no matter the weather. That's when he saw the car at first. It was just a pair of weak hazard lights blinking in the darkness ahead. As he got closer, Daniel could make out the shape of an expensive sedan pulled over on the shoulder. The kind of car he'd only seen in magazines or driving through the wealthy part of town. Dark blue, sleek, probably cost more than he'd make in 5 years. Standing next to the car was an old man. He looked to be in his 70s, maybe older, with white hair and a face lined with age. He was wearing a thick wool coat that looked expensive, the kind with real buttons and a proper collar. But even with that nice coat, the old man was shivering, his hands tucked under his arms as he shifted from foot to foot. Daniel slowed his pace. Part of him wanted to keep walking. He was exhausted, frozen, and still had over a mile to get home. But his mother had always taught him to help people when they needed it, no matter what. It was one of those lessons that stuck with you. The kind that made you who you were. He approached carefully, not wanting to startle the man. "Excuse me, sir. Are you all right? Do you need some help?" The old man turned, and Daniel could see the relief flood across his face. His eyes were kind, tired but grateful. "Oh, thank goodness." Yes, I do. My car just died on me, right here in the middle of nowhere. And my phone." He pulled out an expensive smartphone from his pocket. "The battery's dead. I've been standing here for almost an hour, and you're the first person to stop." Daniel looked at the car, then back at the old man. "What happened? Did it just shut off?" "It started making a strange noise about a mile back, and then all the lights on the dashboard came on at once. I managed to pull over before it completely died." The old man shook his head. "I'm not much good with cars, I'm afraid. Never learned. Always had people to handle these things for me." Daniel walked over to the hood. "Mind if I take a look? Please, be my guest. Though I doubt there's much that can be done out here." The old man introduced himself as Mr. Harrison as he popped the hood. Daniel peered at the engine, pulling out his phone to use as a flashlight. He wasn't a mechanic, not by any stretch, but his father had taught him the basics before he died. How to check the oil, change a tire, recognize common problems. Those Sunday afternoons in their driveway felt like a lifetime ago now. After a few minutes of looking around, Daniel had a pretty good idea of what was wrong. "I think it's your alternator, sir. See this part here?" He pointed with his cold fingers. "When the alternator goes bad, the car can't charge the battery anymore. Eventually, everything just shuts down." Mr. Harrison leaned in to look, though Daniel doubted he understood what he was seeing. "Can you fix it?" Daniel shook his head. "Not here. Not without tools and a new alternator. You're going to need a tow truck." He looked around at the empty highway. "We should probably get your car to a safer spot first, off the shoulder a bit more. And then I can walk to the gas station up the road. There's one about 2 miles from here. I can call a tow truck for you." 2 miles. Mr. Harrison looked worried. In this cold? That's too much to ask. I was already walking that direction anyway. My place isn't too far past the gas station. That wasn't entirely true. But Daniel didn't want the old man to feel bad. They worked together to push the car a bit further off the road. Well, Daniel pushed while Mr. Harrison steered. The car was heavy, and by the time they were done, Daniel's muscles were burning and he was breathing hard, each breath hurting in his chest from the cold air. Mr. Harrison was shivering badly now, his lips starting to look a bit blue. Without thinking twice, Daniel shrugged off his jacket. Here, sir. You need this more than I do. Oh no, I couldn't possibly, please. Daniel held it out. I've been working all night. I'm still warm from pushing the car. You've been standing out here for over an hour. Just take it. The old man hesitated, then slowly accepted the jacket. His hands were shaking as he put it on. Thank you. This is very kind. But won't you be cold? Daniel was already cold, and he knew he'd be even colder on the walk to the gas station. But he just smiled. I'll be fine. I'll walk fast. That'll keep me warm. You just stay here with the car, okay? Keep the hazards on. I'll be back as soon as I can. Mr. Harrison looked at him with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. It was something like surprise, mixed with disbelief, as if he couldn't believe someone would do this for a stranger. I don't even know your name. Daniel. Daniel Chen. Well, Daniel Chen, I cannot thank you enough. Please, when you get back, I'll pay you back for everything. The tow truck, your time, everything. Daniel waved him off. Don't worry about it, sir. Just stay warm. I'll be back soon. And with that, Daniel turned and started walking into the freezing night. His thin shirt already soaked with cold sweat from pushing the car. The wind bit at his exposed arms, and he could feel goosebumps rising all over his skin. 2 miles suddenly seemed very far away. But he'd made a promise to help, and Daniel Chen always kept his promises, no matter what it cost him. The walk to the gas station felt endless. Daniel's arms were covered in goosebumps, and he couldn't stop shivering. He tried crossing his arms over his chest, tucking his hands under his armpits, anything to preserve some warmth. His teeth chattered so hard his jaw started to ache. Every few minutes he'd jog a little to get his blood moving. But he was already exhausted from working all day. And running just made him more tired. The highway stretched out before him like a dark ribbon, lit only by the occasional streetlight. There were no other cars, no houses. Just empty fields on either side, and the sound of wind whistling through the bare trees. Daniel kept thinking about his warm bed at home, about the hot shower he wouldn't be able to take, because they'd had to choose between paying the water bill and buying his mother's medication this month. The medication had won like it always did. When he finally saw the lights of the gas station in the distance, he almost cried with relief. His legs felt like rubber, and his fingers were so numb he could barely feel them anymore. The gas station was one of those old ones, the kind that hadn't been updated since the 90s. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and a bell dinged as Daniel pushed through the door. The warmth hit him like a wall. It felt so good he just stood there for a moment, letting the heated air wash over him. The clerk behind the counter, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, looked up from her magazine. You okay, honey? You look half frozen to death. Daniel nodded, still shivering. I'm all right. Just need to use the phone. There's a broken-down car about 2 miles back on the highway. Need to call a tow truck. She pointed to a payphone on the wall, one of the few that probably still worked in the whole county. Daniel dug through his pockets for change and made the call. The tow company answered after 6 rings. Yeah, we can send someone out, the dispatcher said, sounding bored. But it's going to be a couple hours. We got 2 trucks out right now, and this is our busy season. Lots of cars breaking down in this cold. It'll be $200 paid up front. Daniel's heart sank. $200. That was almost all the money he had left until his next paycheck. Money he'd been saving to pay down his mother's medical bills. But what choice did he have? He couldn't leave Mr. Harrison stranded out there all night. The old man would freeze, Daniel said quietly. I'll pay it. Can you take a card over the phone? He gave them his debit card number, watching his small safety net disappear in an instant. The dispatcher confirmed the truck would be there in about 2 hours, and gave him a confirmation number. Daniel hung up and stood there for a moment, trying not to think about what he'd just done. The clerk was watching him with a curious expression. "That's real nice of you, helping out a stranger like that. It's just the right thing to do," Daniel said. Though his voice sounded hollow, even to his own ears, he bought 2 cups of coffee with the last few dollars in his pocket. Cheap gas station coffee that tasted burnt but was hot. He figured Mr. Harrison would need something warm, and honestly, Daniel needed it too. The clerk threw in a couple of packets of sugar and cream without charging him. "You're a good kid," she said as he left. "Not many people like you left in the world." The walk back felt even longer than the walk there. The cold seemed worse now, probably because Daniel knew he'd be out in it for hours. The coffee helped a little, warming his hands through the paper cup, but the wind kept stealing the heat away. By the time he saw Mr. Harrison's car in the distance, Daniel's whole body ached with cold and exhaustion. Mr. Harrison was sitting in the driver's seat with the door open, still wearing Daniel's jacket. When he saw Daniel approaching, he got out quickly, his face filled with surprise and something else. Was that shock? Had he expected Daniel not to come back? "You came back," Mr. Harrison said, and there was genuine amazement in his voice. "And you brought coffee." "Of course I came back." Daniel handed him one of the cups. "Here, this should help warm you up. The tow truck is on its way. Should be here in about 2 hours." 2 hours. Mr. Harrison looked concerned. "You're going to wait here with me for 2 more hours? In this cold? Without a jacket?" Daniel shrugged, trying to act like it wasn't a big deal even though he was already shivering again. "I'm not going to leave you out here alone, sir. What if something happened? Besides, I already paid for the tow truck. Might as well make sure it shows up." Mr. Harrison went very still. "You paid for it? How much?" $200. "But don't worry about it. You can pay me back whenever." The old man stared at him for a long moment. "Daniel, you gave me your jacket. You walked for miles in the freezing cold. And now you've spent $200 of your own money to help a complete stranger." He shook his head slowly. "Why would you do all this?" Daniel thought about it while he sipped his coffee. Why had he done it? He could barely afford to eat most days. He worked himself to exhaustion just to keep his mother's medication coming. $200 was a fortune to him. But the answer came easily. "Because you needed help, and I was there. That's all. My mom always told me that we help people not because we expect something back, but because it's what makes us human. Besides, what if that was my mom stranded out here? I'd hope someone would stop and help her." They sat together on the guardrail, sipping their coffee and talking to pass the time. Mr. Harrison asked about Daniel's life, and Daniel found himself opening up in a way he rarely did. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe there was something about sitting in the dark with a stranger that made it easier to be honest. He told Mr. Harrison about his mother, about the cancer that was slowly taking her away, about working 3 jobs and still never having enough money, about his father, who died when Daniel was 10, and how he'd taught him to always help people in need. He talked about his dreams of someday starting his own business, something that could help people in his neighborhood who were struggling just like he was. Maybe a community center, or a job training program. Something that gave people hope. Mr. Harrison listened to every word, asking questions that showed he was really paying attention. He wanted to know about Daniel's education, his work ethic, what he thought about different business ideas. It felt less like small talk and more like an interview, but Daniel didn't mind. The old man seemed genuinely interested. Mr. Harrison said after a while, "I've met a lot of people in my life. Rich people, powerful people, people who claim they'd do anything for others. But most of them wouldn't give up their jacket on a night like this. They certainly wouldn't spend their last $200 on a stranger." Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he just shrugged. When the tow truck finally arrived, Daniel helped the driver hook up Mr. Harrison's car. The old man insisted that Daniel ride with them, refusing to leave him by the side of the road. Daniel was too tired and cold to argue. The truck dropped them at a long driveway with tall iron gates. Daniel figured it must lead to some kind of retirement home or care facility. Mr. Harrison asked for Daniel's phone number and address, saying he wanted to pay him back for the tow truck. Daniel was reluctant. He didn't do this for money. But the old man insisted, so Daniel wrote it down on a scrap of paper. "I can't accept any payment right now, sir," Daniel said. "Just knowing you're safe is enough for me." Mr. Harrison held the paper carefully, like it was something precious. "Daniel Chen, you are a rare kind of person. Kindness like yours is never forgotten. It always finds its way back to those who give it." Daniel smiled, too tired to think much about what that meant. He waved goodbye and started the long walk home, his mind already on the alarm clock that would ring in just a few hours. Another day, another shift, another struggle to get by. He had no idea that everything was about to change. Daniel barely remembered getting home that night. He stumbled through the door of their small apartment around 3 in the morning, so exhausted he could hardly stand. His mother was asleep, her breathing raspy in the quiet darkness. He checked on her like he always did, making sure she had water by her bedside and that she looked comfortable. Then he collapsed into his own bed without even taking off his clothes. The alarm went off at 5:30. Daniel groaned and hit the snooze button, his whole body screaming in protest. Every muscle ached. His throat felt raw from breathing in all that cold air. But he couldn't call in sick. They needed the money too badly. So he dragged himself out of bed, took a quick cold shower because the hot water was still shut off, and headed to the diner for his morning shift. The next few days blurred together in a haze of work and exhaustion. Wake up, go to the diner, serve coffee and eggs to people who barely looked at him. Rush to the warehouse, lift boxes until his back felt like it might break. Sometimes he picked up extra hours at a convenience store on weekends. Sleep for a few hours, do it all again. Daniel had almost forgotten about Mr. Harrison and that freezing night on the highway. Almost sometimes, when he was carrying heavy boxes or wiping down tables, his mind would drift back to that conversation by the guardrail. The way the old man had listened to him talk about his dreams, really listened. Like what Daniel had to say actually mattered. That didn't happen often in his life. He'd checked his bank account the day after helping Mr. Harrison, wincing at how low the balance had dropped. The $200 had left a painful dent in his savings. He'd have to pick up extra shifts to make up for it, which meant even less time with his mother. But every time he started to regret it, he thought about what his dad used to say. You measure a man not by what he has, but by what he's willing to give away. A week passed, then another day. It was a Tuesday morning, and Daniel was getting ready for his shift at the diner when his mother called out from her bedroom. "Danny, come here, quick," urged to her room, his heart pounding. Was she okay? Had something happened? But when he got there, she was standing by the window, looking down at the street below. She pointed with a shaky finger. "There's a car down there. A very expensive car. And a woman in a fancy suit just got out. I think she's coming here." Daniel joined her at the window and felt his stomach drop. It was a sleek black car, the kind that probably cost more than their apartment building. As he watched, a woman in a sharp business suit walk toward their building entrance. She carried a leather briefcase and moved with the kind of confidence that came from working in tall office buildings. "Maybe she's got the wrong address," Daniel said, but he didn't really believe it. A few minutes later, there was a knock at their door. Daniel opened it to find the woman standing in their narrow hallway, looking completely out of place in her expensive clothes. She asked, her voice professional, but not unkind. "Yes, that's me. My name is Patricia Webb. I'm the executive assistant to Mr. Richard Harrison. He asked me to find you and extend an invitation. He'd like to meet with you at his office today if you're available." Daniel just stared at her. Richard Harrison. Not just Mr. Harrison. Richard Harrison. Why did that name sound familiar? Patricia must have seen the confusion on his face. "Mr. Harrison is the founder and CEO of Harrison Industries. He wanted me to thank you personally for your help last week and to discuss a matter of importance with you." Harrison Industries. The name hit Daniel like a truck. He'd seen that name before, on billboards and news articles. They were one of the biggest manufacturing companies in the country. They made everything from car parts to industrial equipment. The company was worth billions. With a bead at his mother appeared behind him, clutching her robe. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine, ma'am," Patricia said with a polite smile. "Your son performed an extraordinary kindness for Mr. Harrison, and he'd simply like to thank him properly." Daniel's mind was racing. The old man on the highway had been a billionaire? The guy he'd given his jacket to, bought coffee for, pushed his car with. A billionaire? I have to work, Daniel stammered. My shift starts in 40 minutes. Mr. Harrison has already contacted your employers, Patricia said smoothly. He's arranged for you to have the day off, with full pay. A car is waiting downstairs whenever you're ready. Daniel looked back at his mother. She had tears in her eyes, and she nodded at him, giving him a little push toward the door. Go, she whispered. Go see what this is about. 20 minutes later, Daniel was sitting in the back of the most comfortable car he'd ever been in, watching the city pass by through tinted windows. Patricia sat across from him, typing on her phone, occasionally glancing up to give him a reassuring smile. Daniel had changed into his one good shirt and the decent pair of pants he wore to job interviews. But he still felt completely out of place. They drove downtown, into the part of the city where the buildings touched the sky and people wore suits that cost more than his monthly rent. The car pulled up in front of a massive skyscraper with the words Harrison Industries carved into the stone above the entrance. Daniel's hands were sweating. Patricia led him through a lobby that looked like something from a movie. Marble floors, massive chandeliers, and a security desk where guards nodded at them as they passed. They took an elevator that moved so smoothly Daniel barely felt it, watching the numbers climb higher and higher. 20th floor, 30th, 40th. They didn't stop until they reached the very top. The elevator doors opened directly into an office suite that took Daniel's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the entire city. Expensive artwork hung on the walls. Everything was polished wood and soft leather and quiet wealth. And there, standing by the window, in a perfectly tailored suit, was Mr. Harrison. He looked completely different from the shivering old man on the highway. Here, in his element, he looked powerful, important, like someone who made decisions that affected thousands of lives. But when he turned and saw Daniel, his face broke into the same warm smile from that night. Daniel, he said, walking over with his hand extended. Thank you for coming. Please, sit down. Can Patricia get you anything? Coffee? Water? Daniel's mouth was dry, but he managed to shake his head. He sat in a chair that probably cost more than his car used to be worth, feeling completely overwhelmed. Mr. Harrison sat across from him, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I imagine you're quite confused right now. Yes, sir? Very confused. Let me explain. That night on the highway, I wasn't just some unlucky old man whose car broke down. Well, I was that, but there's more to the story. Mr. Harrison paused, choosing his words carefully. I had just come from a charity event. I'd spent the evening surrounded by wealthy people, all of them claiming to be generous and kind. All of them saying they cared about helping others. But I've learned over the years that what people say and what they do are often very different things. Daniel listened, not sure where this was going. My car genuinely did break down. But when it happened, I decided to wait and see what would happen. How many cars would pass me by? Would anyone stop? And if they did, what kind of person would it be? Mr. Harrison's eyes were intense now. I've been betrayed many times in my life, Daniel. By business partners, by people I thought were friends. I've watched people be kind to my face and cruel behind my back. I was testing humanity, I suppose, seeing if there was still genuine kindness in the world. And then you stopped. A young man, clearly struggling himself, walking home from work in the freezing cold. You didn't just offer to help. You gave me your jacket. You walked miles in the bitter cold. You've spent money I'm sure you couldn't afford to spend. And you did it without hesitation, without expecting anything in return. Daniel felt his face flush. Anyone would have done the same thing. Mr. Harrison shook his head slowly. No, Daniel, they wouldn't have. 17 cars passed me before you came along. 17? You were the only one who stopped. The room was quiet for a moment. Daniel could hear the hum of the city far below, the quiet buzz of the office around them. Since that night, I've had my team look into your background. I hope you don't mind, but I needed to know if what I saw in you was real. Mr. Harrison pulled out a folder from his desk. 3 jobs, supporting your sick mother alone, working yourself to exhaustion just to keep her in medication. No complaints. No asking for help. And according to everyone we spoke to, you're honest, hardworking, and kind to everyone you meet.
Oh.
Daniel didn't know what to say. Someone had investigated him? That should have felt invasive. Somehow it didn't. Mr. Harrison stood up and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Daniel, I asked you here today because I want to offer you something. Something that might change your life. Daniel's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He sat frozen in that expensive leather chair, staring at Mr. Harrison's back as the old man looked out over the city. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear and hope, all mixed together. Mr. Harrison turned around, and there was something in his eyes that looked almost sad. I don't have children, Daniel. No sons or daughters to pass my legacy to. My wife died 15 years ago, and we never had the chance to start a family. I've built this company from nothing, spent 50 years of my life making it what it is today. Sometimes I wonder what it's all for. Who will carry on the work when I'm gone? Who will make sure that all this means something? He walked back to his desk and picked up the folder again, flipping through pages that Daniel couldn't see. I've tried to find the right people. I've hired the best business school graduates, brought in consultants, put executives through every test imaginable. But you know what I've learned? You can teach someone to read a balance sheet. You can teach them strategy and management and all the technical skills they need. But you can't teach character. You can't teach someone to care about others more than themselves. Either they have it or they don't. Daniel's throat felt tight. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what. You have something rare, Daniel. Something I've been searching for. Mr. Harrison sat back down, this time behind his massive desk. I want to offer you a full scholarship to complete your business degree. Any school you want, all expenses paid. Books, tuition, housing, everything. Daniel's mouth fell open. He dropped out of college after his mother got sick, unable to afford both tuition and her medical bills. He'd always planned to go back someday, but someday felt like a distant dream that would never come true. But that's not all, Mr. Harrison continued. I want to offer you a position here at Harrison Industries. You'd start as a management trainee, working in different departments to learn how the company operates. The salary would be $80,000 a year to start. $80,000. Daniel made less than $30,000 across all three of his jobs combined. The number didn't even feel real. You'd have full benefits, of course. Health insurance, dental, vision. Which brings me to the next part. Mr. Harrison's voice softened. Your mother's medical bills. I'd like to help with those. My company has connections with the best cancer treatment centers in the country. We can get her into a program where she'll receive the care she needs. All covered. No more choosing between medication and rent. No more bills piling up on your kitchen table. Daniel felt something break inside him. It was too much. It was all too much. His vision blurred as tears filled his eyes, and he tried to blink them away, but they kept coming. His shoulders shook as he put his face in his hands, and he couldn't stop the sob that escaped from somewhere deep in his chest. He was crying in front of a billionaire, in a fancy office high above the city, and he couldn't stop. All the exhaustion, all the fear, all the nights lying awake wondering if his mother would make it through another month. All the times he'd gone hungry so she could eat. All of it came pouring out. Mr. Harrison didn't say anything. He just waited, letting Daniel have this moment. When Patricia appeared in the doorway looking concerned, Mr. Harrison waved her away gently. After a few minutes, Daniel managed to pull himself together. He wiped his eyes with his sleeve, feeling embarrassed and grateful and overwhelmed all at once. I'm sorry, he said, his voice rough. I can't believe this is real. It's real, Mr. Harrison said quietly. And you have nothing to apologize for. I know what it's like to carry weight that feels impossible. I grew up poor myself, Daniel. My father worked in a factory, my mother cleaned houses. I built this company because I remembered what it felt like to be powerless. To watch my parents work themselves to death and still not have enough. I swore that if I ever had the means, I would help people like us. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a checkbook. The old-fashioned kind that Daniel's grandmother used to use? Mr. Harrison wrote carefully, his pen scratching across the paper. Then he tore out the check and slid it across the desk. Daniel looked down at it. $50,000. Written out in careful handwriting, made payable to Daniel Chen. This is for you and your mother, Mr. Harrison said. To help you get back on your feet, pay off some bills. Get your mother into a better living situation. Buy yourself a car so you don't have to walk miles in the freezing cold. Whatever you need. Daniel stared at the check, unable to touch it. It felt like touching it would make it disappear, like this was all some kind of dream, and he'd wake up back in his tiny apartment with the alarm going off at 5:30. I don't understand, Daniel whispered. Why are you doing all this? I just helped you with your car. That's all. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't, Mr. Harrison said firmly. 17 cars, Daniel. You were the only one. And after I had my team research your background, I learned something else. Do you remember helping an elderly woman carry her groceries home last month? Or giving your lunch to a homeless man outside your work? Or staying late at the diner without extra pay to cover for a coworker whose child was sick? Daniel felt his face flush. Those were just small things. Normal things. You think everyone does these things, but they don't. Because people are so focused on their own problems that they forget to look around and see who needs help. But you never forgot, even when you had every reason to think only about yourself. Mr. Harrison leaned forward. I'm 76 years old, Daniel. I don't have forever to find someone who can help me carry on the work I care about. I have a foundation, a charitable organization that gives away millions of dollars every year to people who need it. But money alone doesn't change lives. You need someone who understands what it's like to struggle, someone who won't forget where they came from. The weight of what Mr. Harrison was saying slowly sank in. This wasn't just about a job or a scholarship. This was about something bigger. I'm looking for someone to eventually take over the leadership of the Harrison Foundation. Someone who will make sure that money goes to people who really need it, who will fight for the people that everyone else ignores. I think you could be that person, Daniel. But first, you need to finish your education. You need to learn how business works, how to manage people and resources. And you need time to prove to yourself and to me that what I saw in you that night was real. Daniel's hands were shaking as he finally picked up the check. The paper felt fragile between his fingers, like it might crumble to dust. What if I fail? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. What if I'm not smart enough or good enough? What if I let you down? Mr. Harrison smiled, and it was the warmest smile Daniel had ever seen. Then you fail, and you learn, and you try again. That's all any of us can do. But I don't think you'll fail, Daniel. You have something that can't be taught in any school or training program. You have a good heart. And in my experience, people with good hearts find a way to make things work. Patricia knocked softly on the door. Mr. Harrison, your 2 o'clock is waiting. Mr. Harrison nodded but kept his eyes on Daniel. I need an answer, but I don't need it today. Go home. Talk to your mother. Think about what you want your life to look like. The offer will stand for 1 week. You can reach me through Patricia whenever you're ready. Daniel stood up on shaky legs. He folded the check carefully and put it in his pocket, still half convinced it would vanish. Can I ask you something? Of course. That night on the highway, if I hadn't stopped, if I'd just walked past like those other 17 cars, would you have been okay? Mr. Harrison considered the question. Honestly, I don't know. I might have frozen out there. My phone was dead. I had no way to call for help. I'd been standing in that cold for over an hour when you showed up. He paused. You might have saved my life, Daniel. And now, I'd like to help save yours. Or at least make it a lot easier. Daniel nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He shook Mr. Harrison's hand, feeling the strength in the old man's grip. As Patricia led him back to the elevator, Daniel felt like he was floating. The city looked different from up here, brighter, full of possibility. He touched the check in his pocket, making sure it was still real. In the elevator, Patricia smiled at him. He doesn't make offers like this lightly. In 20 years of working for him, I've never seen him take to anyone the way he's taken to you. I still can't believe it's happening, Daniel admitted. Believe it, she said as the elevator doors opened to the lobby. And Daniel? Whatever you decide, make sure it's what you really want. Mr. Harrison will respect your choice either way." The car ride home passed in a blur. Daniel's mind was spinning with everything that had happened, everything that had been said. When he walked into the apartment, his mother was waiting on the couch, her eyes wide with worry and hope. "Well?" she asked. Daniel pulled out the check and showed it to her. She looked at it for a long moment, her hand covering her mouth. Then she started crying, pulling Daniel into a hug that made his ribs ache. "My boy," she whispered. "My good, kind boy. I'm so proud of you." They held each other in that small apartment, both of them crying now. Both of them feeling the weight of years of struggle finally starting to lift. Daniel didn't sleep much that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through everything that had happened. The check sat on his nightstand, and every few minutes he'd turn on his phone light just to make sure it was still there, that he hadn't imagined the whole thing. His mother had cried for almost an hour after he told her everything. Not sad tears, but the kind of tears that come when something impossible becomes real. They'd talked late into the night about what this meant, what he should do. She kept saying she didn't want him to feel pressured, that whatever choice he made would be the right one. But Daniel could see the hope in her eyes. The way her shoulders seemed lighter than they'd been in years. By morning, Daniel knew what his answer would be. He'd known it the moment Mr. Harrison made the offer, really. This was the chance he'd been praying for, the miracle he'd stopped believing could happen. He'd be a fool to walk away from it. He called Patricia's number at 9 o'clock sharp. She answered on the second ring. "I want to accept," Daniel said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I want to say yes to everything." You could hear the smile in her voice. "I'm so glad, Daniel. Mr. Harrison will be thrilled. Can you come by the office tomorrow? We'll need to handle some paperwork, get everything officially started." The next few weeks moved so fast, Daniel felt like he was living someone else's life. He deposited the check, watching his bank balance jump from double digits to numbers he'd never seen before. He paid off his mother's medical bills in one transaction. Feeling a weight lift from his shoulders that he'd been carrying for so long, he'd forgotten what life felt like without it. They moved to a better apartment. One with heat that actually worked and hot water that came out of the faucets whenever you wanted it. It had 2 real bedrooms and windows that weren't cracked. His mother cried again when she saw it, running her hands along the clean walls like she couldn't believe they were real. Getting her into the cancer treatment program was like watching a miracle unfold. Suddenly there were doctors returning calls, appointments being scheduled, nurses who had time to explain things carefully. The new treatments were aggressive but promising. For the first time in 2 years, the doctors used the word hopeful. Daniel started his position at Harrison Industries in January. That first day, walking into the building in a suit that actually fit him properly, he felt like an imposter. Everyone seemed so confident, so polished. They all knew what they were doing, while Daniel still felt like the kid who'd been lifting boxes at a warehouse. Just weeks ago. But Mr. Harrison had been right about one thing. Daniel could learn the technical stuff. He threw himself into the work with the same dedication he'd brought to his 3 jobs. He showed up early, stayed late, asked questions when he didn't understand something. He rotated through different departments, learning how manufacturing worked, how supply chains operated, how the business side of things functioned. Some people in the company whispered about him. Who was this kid who came out of nowhere? Why was Mr. Harrison giving him so much attention? Daniel heard the gossip, but tried not to let it bother him. He just kept working, kept learning, kept proving himself one day at a time. Mr. Harrison checked in with him regularly, always asking how things were going, if he felt overwhelmed, if he needed help with anything. They'd have lunch in Mr. Harrison's office sometimes. The old man would share stories from his own early days in business, the failures he'd survived, the lessons he'd learned the hard way. "The hardest part isn't learning how to make money," Mr. Harrison told him once. "It's remembering why you wanted to make it in the first place. Never forget where you came from, Daniel. Never forget what it felt like to struggle. That's what will make you different from everyone else in this building." Daniel enrolled in night classes to finish his business degree. It was exhausting, working all day and studying at night, but it was a different kind of exhaustion than before. This time, he was building towards something, not just surviving day to day. His mother would quiz him on his homework when he came home, both of them sitting at their new kitchen table. Both of them still sometimes looking around in disbelief at how much had changed. 6 months passed. Then a year. Daniel finished his degree, graduating with honors. Mr. Harrison and his mother sat together at the ceremony, both of them beaming with pride. Daniel looked out at them from the stage and had to blink back tears, remembering all the times he'd thought this day would never come. Shortly after graduation, Mr. Harrison called Daniel into his office. It was a familiar space now, less intimidating than it had been that first day. The old man was standing by his window, looking out at the city like he always did when he had something important to say. "I've been watching you carefully this past year," Mr. Harrison said. "The way you work, the way you treat people, the decisions you make when you think no one's watching. And I want to offer you a new position." Daniel's heart started beating faster. "What kind of position?" "Director of the Harrison Foundation. You'd be responsible for overseeing all our charitable initiatives, deciding how we allocate our resources, finding the people and programs that need support. It's a big job, Daniel. Millions of dollars passing through your hands every year. A lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility." Daniel thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. "I want to do it," Mr. Harrison smiled. "I thought you might say that. There's one condition, though. I want you to never forget what it was like when you had nothing. I want you to visit the neighborhoods where people are struggling. Talk to them. Listen to their stories. Don't make decisions from up here in this tower. Make them from down there, where real life happens." "I won't forget," Daniel promised. "I couldn't if I tried, and he didn't." Over the next 2 years, Daniel transformed the Harrison Foundation. He funded after-school programs in poor neighborhoods, created job training centers for people who couldn't afford college, set up emergency assistance programs for families facing medical crises like his own had been. Every decision he made thought about what would have helped his family during their darkest days. He also never stopped doing the small things. He still helped strangers when they needed it. Still bought coffee for homeless people outside his building. Still stopped when he saw someone stranded on the side of the road. One winter evening, 3 years after that freezing night on the highway, Daniel was driving home from a foundation event. It was snowing, and the roads were getting slippery. Up ahead, he saw a car pulled over with its hazard lights blinking. A young woman stood beside it, looking cold and scared and alone. Daniel pulled over without hesitation. He got out of his warm car and walked over to her. "Hi there," he said with a smile. "Looks like you could use some help." The relief on her face made him think of Mr. Harrison all those years ago. As he helped her with her car, called a tow truck, gave her his coat to stay warm, he understood something profound. The kindness he'd shown that night hadn't just changed his life. It had taught him who he wanted to be. Mr. Harrison had been right. Kindness did find its way back, but it also flowed forward, touching everyone it reached, creating ripples that spread further than you could ever imagine. The young woman thanked him profusely as the tow truck arrived. "I can't believe you stopped," she said, tears in her eyes. "Everyone else just drove past." "That's okay," Daniel said. "I know what it's like to need help. We all do at some point." As he drove away, his phone rang. It was his mother, calling from the apartment they now shared with a live-in nurse who helped her on hard days. The treatments had worked. She was in remission. The doctors were optimistic. "Just calling to say goodnight, honey," she said, her voice strong and clear. "And to tell you I love you. I love you too, Mom." Daniel hung up and smiled, watching the snow fall gently on the city lights. He thought about that freezing night, about the choice to stop and help when it would have been easier to keep walking. About how one decision, one moment of kindness, changed absolutely everything. He'd learned the most important lesson of all. You never know how much your kindness might matter. You never know whose life you might save or whose life might save yours in return. All you can do is be the person who stops, the person who helps, the person who gives their jacket away on a freezing night, because that's what makes us human. That's what makes life worth living. And Daniel Chen, who had once been so poor he couldn't afford to fix his own truck, who had walked miles in the freezing cold with nothing but hope to keep him warm, had learned that the richest thing a person could have wasn't money or power or success. It was the ability to see someone who needed help and choose, without hesitation, to be the one who stopped.